The Federal Aviation Administration has finally commented on the environmental impacts of SpaceX's expansive Starbase launch facility near Boca Chica, Texas, after months of speculation. The organization says SpaceX can continue its expansion and its application for a launch license for its Starship spacecraft and the Super Heavy rocket booster if the company takes about 75 actions to reduce environmental hazards. Would you like to know more about it? Then stay tuned. Welcome to Tecmo. In today's video, we will talk all about the FAA's Environmental Assessment Report and their approval of the Boca Chica launch site in Texas. But before we make it to the video, make sure you subscribe to our channel for more premium content and hit the notification bell to be the first to watch our videos. Boca Chica is a crucial location for the business, where engineers have increased testing of Starship and Super Heavy in preparation for deep space flights. Local organizations, however, including those concerned with the environment and beach access, are alarmed by the rise in pollution, the facility's potential impact on wildlife, and the restrictions on access to public beaches. The location is along the Gulf of Mexico and is close to populated areas, liquefied natural gas facilities, local roads, wildlife refuges, and the Mexican border. Last September, the FAA published its initial evaluation and held 2 online public hearings where locals and SpaceX supporters and detractors from across the nation could voice their opinions. Now, the organization determined in a report released today that the company needs to take care of a number of issues before receiving its highly sought-after launch license, including better monitoring of potential effects on vegetation and wildlife, and notifying the surrounding communities of noise and road closures. The FAA's decision could have wide-ranging effects, because SpaceX cannot proceed with its plans to test Starship and the Super Heavy until it receives approval from the organization. That rocket undoubtedly has a lot riding on it for the company. The Super Heavy will be one of only 2 heavy-lift launchers that can carry people and supplies to the Moon and eventually Mars, along with NASA's Space Launch System. As part of its Artemis program, NASA has also invested in a lander variant of Starship for use when astronauts visit the Moon again in a few years. The FAA and SpaceX had not responded to Wired's requests for interviews as of the time of the publication. However, as soon as the evaluation was released, SpaceX tweeted a link along with the phrase, "One step closer to the first orbital flight test of Starship." Elon Musk, the CEO of SpaceX, had previously threatened to relocate Starship testing to Florida if the AAA's procedure took too long or required an environmental impact statement, a more thorough and time-consuming review that would be followed by a mitigation plan to lessen potential ecological harms. The FAA decided against that course of action and gave SpaceX a favorable decision with a finding of no significant impact. Despite this, the agency claims that the company still has work to do, and it says a lot in its 174-page report. According to the document, SpaceX must permit biologists to monitor any effects on wildlife and must remove any launch debris that lands in sensitive habitats. To lessen annoyance to locals and wildlife, SpaceX should change the lighting at the launch complex. They should also give more notice before launches, keep State Highway 4 open for a short period of time, and avoid closing it on weekends and holidays. The U.S. Department of Transportation will also examine any potential impacts on public safety and national security before allowing SpaceX to continue its application for a launch license for the Starship. Wendy Whitman Cobb, a researcher at the Air Force School of Advanced Air and Space Studies in Montgomery, Alabama, says, "It feels to me that they wanted to find a middle ground between requiring a full EIS and getting SpaceX moving as quickly as it could. It has been a long and difficult road to get here." The location for the business Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy rockets received FAA approval in 2014. However, SpaceX increased the scope of its plans, which prompted a second review that would take into account not only the risks associated with testing and launching larger rockets, but also the dangers of noise, air, and water pollution, as well as the effects of new construction at the site. The agency initially gave itself until December 31st to make a decision, after publishing a 152-page report in September. But agency representatives repeatedly pushed back that deadline. On April 29th, the day they were supposed to announce their choice, they issued a brief statement in which they cited SpaceX's multiple changes to its application that required additional FAA analysis, and stated that they were still considering roughly 18,000 public comments. Additionally, The FAA has repeatedly stated that a launch license is not given at the conclusion of the procedure. According to Whitman Cobb, the government's role is to strike a balance between local concerns and the interests of those trying to advance business and commerce. The FAA's lengthy review process just reflects the difficulty of bureaucratic regulations, particularly for an industry like spaceflight that is moving so quickly. The FAA has rarely dealt with the environmental and local issues associated with large launch and testing sites because there are currently only a small number of spaceports in the United States. But as the industry develops, that might change. Approximately 60 years ago, Cape Canaveral, Florida, became the first legitimate spaceport in the country, and today a sizable area of land is protected around it. It is situated near an ocean, as are numerous other spaceports, including SpaceX in Boca Chica. Others have been constructed in utterly remote landlocked regions. Instead of on or just above the launch pad, these expanses of water or uninhabited land are intended to safeguard both people and wildlife from falling debris and chemical contamination in the event that a rocket explodes in the air. There's always a chance that in the first 30 to 60 seconds, if there is a failure, it will be close enough to the ground that you will see debris fall. It will be close enough to the ground that you will see debris fall. I believe there is a very slim chance, and the FAA will quantify this, perhaps even a smaller chance than being struck by lightning, but the possibility is not nil. What if a rocket explodes and crashes into a wildlife refuge or a house? Asks Mariel Borowitz, a Georgia Tech expert on space policy. Even though they don't launch rockets on orbital missions, spaceports that launch spaceplanes destined for the edge of space, like Virgin Galactic's VSS Unity and Sierra Space Corporation's Ring Chaser, must adhere to similar environmental and safety standards. Virgin Galactic's Mojave, California launch site was evaluated by the FAA in 2012, and Sierra Space is currently in the pre-application stage with the agency to land its spacecraft at the Space Florida's shuttle landing facility. In any case, other businesses and communities are undoubtedly interested in how this process turns out. From Alaska to Alabama, the FAA has granted 14 licenses for spaceports, and more will be constructed. Some ideas, such as the Michigan Aerospace Manufacturers Association's suggestion for a spaceport on the shore of Lake Michigan, have drawn criticism. Even if a proposed spaceport receives FAA approval, the neighborhood may decide against it, as happened with one for Georgia's southeast coast. Voters resoundingly rejected the plan in March, in part because residents lost interest in it as a result of the FAA and supporters' failure to adequately explain its advantages and disadvantages, according to Borowitz. She contends that this emphasizes the necessity of openness and better communication, including at Boca Chica. Some SpaceX detractors in the Boca Chica area worry that the company won't carry out the steps that the FAA demands, because they feel it hasn't done a good job on this task thus far. Jim Chapman, a board member of the nonprofit organization Save RGB, says SpaceX has a poor track of upholding all the environmental regulations from 2014. The Texas General Land Office, Texas Land Commissioner George P. Bush, and Cameron County in Texas have been sued by Safe RGB, the Sierra Club, and the Carrizo Comecrudo tribe of Texas for regularly restricting access to the Boca Chica beach during SpaceX Starship operations. They assert that in contrast to what was permitted by the FAA's existing agreement, SpaceX frequently closed the roads near the beach last year. The FAA itself is receiving attention as a result of the decision. Some supporters of the commercial space agency have called for changing the agency's regulatory role and shifting some of that work to other agencies due to the lengthy agency review process. Other critics, including Chapman and his colleagues, are concerned that the FAA won't uphold its own regulations and that it hasn't gone far enough in its efforts to reduce the risks associated with the spaceport expansion. So that's all for today's video. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, and if you want to watch more videos like this one, hit the subscribe button and turn on the notifications so that you always will be notified.